All right, we are recording. Hey everybody, it's Will with Schedulefly, and I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina today with Ben Garbee, who is the GM at Lewis Barbecue, which is I just ate Lewis. It's actually the second time I've been here. Phenomenal place in a frankly a very, very competitive culinary town. And this place stands out and is doing really well and has an interesting story. So Ben was kind enough to take some time today. So Ben, thank you very much, man.
Yeah, you're welcome, Will.
So you're the GM here. Tell me how you got in hospitality initially. Where does your story start?
Well, I got my first job in a restaurant. I was a Chinese delivery boy in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I grew up. And I started working there and was the first of my friends to work there. And I got about 5 of my friends hired there. So it became a really fun job and just kind of cruising around in my car, delivering Chinese food.
Nice.
Worked in restaurants, after that in college, English degree, and taught high school for a year right out of college, and then went straight back to restaurants and waiting tables, and kind of just worked my way up at restaurants and got into the management side of things, and I've been doing that for probably the last 6 or 7 years.
How'd you get down here to Charleston?
So my now ex-wife and I, we moved down here just because we thought Charleston was always a cool place to go. We went from living in Lynchburg, Virginia for a year after college, and came down here, and I didn't have a job, didn't have a house, anywhere to live, so we stayed at the James Island County Park when we first moved here.
Wow.
And we were like, all right, we got a couple $100, we're going to find a job, and then we're going to find an apartment, and we're going to make it happen, and we made it happen.
How long have you been here at Lewis?
So I've worked with John. We've been open since June 2016, and I worked with him for about a year before we opened. So we did a series of pop-ups at Revelry Brewery, which is right down the street, and then we spent about a year, getting the restaurant together, doing other pop-ups in town, kind of getting the town excited for us, honing in the food and getting all the little details figured out. So about 3.5 years.
Okay, tell me about pop-ups. Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing with that and how that works and what the goal is when you are doing this.
It worked great for us. So what happened, the timeline of things was, this was 2015, and we had the space for the restaurant, but we were waiting on permits, and just the whole process takes a long time. So instead of us just kind of sitting around twiddling our thumbs, we were like, hey, we're going to get ourselves out here and get the town excited for us. So we partnered up with a local brewery, Revelry, which is literally 2 blocks away. And we did a series called the Lewis Barbecue Summer Pop-Up or Summer Barbecue or something like that. And we did 14 weeks of it. And we cooked in the parking lots essentially, and just kind of wherever we could. And was a neighboring restaurant was nice enough for us to use their kitchen to prep the sides and everything like that. So we did 14 weeks of that, and the first one, it was okay. And then by the end of the summer, we had people waiting about 3 hours for the barbecue, and got everybody really excited about it. So it's one of the best things that we did to open strong.
You mentioned John. John is the owner?
Yep, John Lewis.
What's the back? Did he come from? Where did he come from?
He was born in El Paso.
Okay, I thought Texas had something to do with this.
Kind of the story, it's kind of interesting. He grew up in El Paso in western Texas, and then he moved to Denver in his early 20s, and he thought that barbecue in Denver was not very good, so he started learning how to make barbecue, and then he started learning how to make smokers, and just kind of started tinkering around with that, and started doing these barbecue competitions and got pretty good at it. Then moved back down to Austin after living in Denver for a couple of years, and teamed up with Aaron Franklin right when Aaron was starting with the trailer at his kind of now iconic barbecue restaurant. And so John was the kind of head pitmaster at Franklin Barbecue for the first 2 years that they were open. And then he moved on to another really well-renowned Austin barbecue spot, La Barbecue, which is still open and operating. And he did that for about 2 years, and then came to Charleston. And this is his first restaurant. and the only one right now.
I mean, he knocked it out of the park here. Why did he come to? I mean, Charleston's a competitive place. What was his? Did he have a attachment to Charleston or ties here?
So no, not at all. He, I guess it was the summer of 2014. There was a local brewery, Holy City, and they had this. There's a local group called the Charleston Brown Water Society, and it's pretty much just a bunch of dudes that get together and drink bourbon.
Yeah,
and they put on. Yeah, it's really fun. They put on this barbecue event every year, and this was the first year they did it. And so they had they invited John from Law Barbecue at the time, and they invited Rodney Scott, who was not in Charleston at the time. He was at just in his Hemingway spot.
Yeah, and
the two of them cooked barbecue, and this guy BJ Dennis did all the sides, and he's this great. He does kind of his focus is on Gullah cuisine, and he is very much a part of the Gullah culture and kind of promoting that, and has been on Top Chef and numerous shows and stuff. So he was doing the sides for that. So John came down here and was like, "Hey man, Charleston's pretty cool, and it's got it's in the South where people love barbecue, but it doesn't have a rich barbecue culture, and there's things that they can get here, like oak wood grows here, so that's kind of a big thing. Is there's a plentiful supply of oak wood, which is very essential to Central Texas style barbecue, and just teamed up with the guys that had owned this property, and he was looking at much smaller spots to start with, and they were like, "Hey, let's do it right, let's do it big," and so got this spot, and we have 4 huge smokers that John and his dad, they fabricated themselves. They've got a little side company called Austin Smokeworks, and they do all the pits, and so made those in Texas, brought them up here, and that's kind of the heart of the restaurant.
So y'all had a good following already from those pop-ups when you opened, and what's so when you first started, it was how many years ago?
3.5. So summer of 2015.
Okay, 3.5 years. Well, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, we're steadily getting busier every year, and we opened with a big bang. We had news crews here. We had half the city show up for opening. So
how did that? Were you prepared for that? Were you able to handle that? Because I know sometimes when you have that and then you've got to actually execute, that can be. I bet that was pretty challenging.
Not at all. So we one of the things with opening a restaurant is, you're waiting for all these permits to come in. You're waiting for the final DHEC approval. So we didn't have a whole lot of practice runs. We had 2 nights of soft opening, and, that helped us. But as far as just, learning this whole new computer system, all the, the way that we serve meat and slice meat, we've got our meat slicers that are now highly trained, and they weren't, very well trained. A couple of them actually went down to La Barbecue with John in Austin before we opened and spent about a week working on the trailer. But for the most part, the staff is pretty green, moving slow. The cooks back there had been doing it a little bit, but they hadn't been had ample time to really, really hone it in. So, I think that our opening day food was passable and pretty good, but it's not what it was. It's become today. So people were just excited to see us open, and it was definitely an event here when it did, and it took us a few weeks to kind of hone it in and get it going.
Well, so you've come a long way running an operation like this. This is a significant business, and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things going on from, starting out driving Chinese food, and here you are. Clearly, I know you taught for a year, but this is clearly something that you really enjoy, and
I love it.
You have a passion for your craft, I can tell. So what is it about what do you love the most about it?
I like the opportunity to create a culture, within the restaurant for the staff and also for the customers that come in. So, kind of the hierarchy of things. And, Danny Meyer came up with this, not me. But the number 1 people that you have to keep happy are your employees.
Yeah.
And the number 2 people that you have to keep happy are the customers. And the number 3 people that you have to keep up happy are the investors.
Yeah.
And so, you keep those employees happy. They mirror that to the customers. They're in good moods. They're happy to be there. They're in a safe, comfortable work environment. that is reflected to the customers who, are spending their money and having a good time and giving us good reviews on Yelp and, Google and whatever. And then the money comes in for that and keeps everybody happy.
Yeah, for sure.
But I really enjoy, creating a nice, comfortable work environment. I've worked in a lot of restaurants that have had the opposite of that. So really try to...
what does the opposite of that look like?
So just, a lot of egos, in the kitchen and in the management in front of the house. So, I try to be part of the team whenever I can. And, I'm not afraid to take out the trash or bust some tables or whatever needs to be done. And, I try to lead by example, and just that golden rule is treating people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Be it the dishwasher or the meat slicer or the guy that comes in at 3 a.m. to start the pork ribs.
Yeah.
So just we're all a team, and I just have my role, and everybody's got their role, and they're all pretty important.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was going to ask you the kind of culture you're trying to create here. I mean, it's really one of inclusiveness and sort of a family environment, and
absolutely,
nobody's, the ego part of it is, it's interesting. I'm finding more and more people these days, Ben, that have your philosophy, which makes a lot of sense to me, and certainly seems to work really well, particularly with staff. I mean, if you don't have good staff, it's, like you said, like Danny Meyer said, I mean, that's where it all starts. If they're not happy, it will translate over to the customers. They're not going to be happy.
Absolutely.
But they've got to buy into what you're doing, not just do as I say, but your style is do as I do. Leading by example, as you said, and that's a refreshing thing. I guess I'm curious here, and it varies in different parts of the country, but I'm hearing a lot more these days about people are having it's just really hard to find and keep good people. Is that something you guys are always dealing with here, or I know there's a lot of people that are dialed into the hospitality scene in Charleston, generally speaking, so that's probably a plus for you.
When we opened, probably the hardest part was staffing. So I had a whiteboard at my house, and I would look at it every day, multiple times a day, and I would just have all the different positions. I'd have dishwasher, and I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd have meat slicer, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bartender, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just doing these interviews, and people kind of taking a little bit of a gamble on us. Say, hey, do you want to come work for a restaurant that's not open yet? And we started doing the interviews about a month beforehand, and somehow we got a full staff, and it was a full-time job getting that. And a lot of the people that were on that opening staff are still here today, which I feel really good about. And people that usually leave for a good reason. They go move or go back to school, or leave on a positive note. So that's important to me. And sometimes it's just not a good fit for people. But as far as your question about staffing, is that there are a lot of opening jobs right now. So when I was kind of in my heyday of waiting tables and kind of doing that hustle, was 2007, 2008, when the economy tanked and people were lucky to have a job, period. And so people just see it a little differently now, because it's, if it doesn't work out here, hey, just go down the street and, get another job somewhere else. So that's really kind of part of something that's always in the back of my mind, is creating that culture to keep people here and creating the safe, comfortable work environment where, maybe you can go somewhere else and make a little bit more money or whatever. But I think that this, as far as doing front of the house or back of the house here, I think people kind of stick around here because it's it's a comfortable place that people seem to not mind and kind of enjoy working here.
Well, everybody wants to feel appreciated and validated. So, those things are really important. Money's an issue, but unless it's just the be-all, end-all for you, then that probably isn't the best thing. But you're really creating an environment where people want to be, and that's good, man. Well, so how do you find, like, when you lose somebody, maybe they graduate and they move on or whatever, they leave on a good, how do you find
So my favorite way to find things is kind of going back to the Chinese delivery days. Is, I worked at this Chinese restaurant, and I was the only person there that didn't speak Chinese, and I felt a little isolated and whatever, and all of a sudden I realized, hey, if I got my friends to work here, this would be a lot more fun. So my number one favorite thing to do is when somebody's leaving to ask people around, hey, do you have any friends that would be like you put your name behind and like this would be a good hire? And we've had a lot of people that way. So sometimes it doesn't always work out. And, obviously there's no hard feelings for the person that, suggested that person. But that's my favorite way to find people, and if that doesn't really click or work out, or we don't get anybody for that, it's Craigslist and, Facebook ads and things like that. But, I find a lot of those people are just kind of, cruising the ads and they're not very serious about doing it. And, there's a 50-50 chance that they even show up for the interview that we set up. And, most of the time, those are not the best hires. But we've had a few that have worked out really well, just kind of cold coming in here. But, we've also created a restaurant with a good reputation. And I think people say, hey, this isn't a bad place to work. And, people hear that. And, it's important to keep that reputation because you're always going to be looking for staff. And, you don't want to be like, hey, you don't want to work for those jerks at Lewis Barbecue.
Right.
So, that's always something to keep in mind and, not burning any bridges that way.
Yeah, for sure. What's the most challenging thing about what you do?
So this might sound, a little cliche or whatever, but I kind of have my little philosophy about what makes my job easy. And there's a couple pieces of criteria. And number one is everybody shows up. And number two is everybody's in a halfway decent mood. Number three is we don't run out of food. And number four is the weather's pretty good. So number one, everybody showing up. That's absolutely, makes it the hardest thing in the world is if you get a phone call 5 minutes before someone's shift and, we've got different stations that are very specific and people are trained very specifically to those stations. And if somebody doesn't show up, the whole ship falls down. So we've got to figure out something really fast on the fly. So that's the most important thing. And then number two is everybody showing up in a good mood. And I've learned in my years that I cannot control the way people are going to act or feel or the moods that they're going to come into. I just need to adapt to that. But if everybody's in a halfway decent mood, it makes my job a lot easier. And it makes a better experience for the customers as well, especially on the front of the outside and the back of the outside. The bad attitude is very contagious and it brings other people down. So, I'll usually, if I see something happening, I'll bring somebody in the office and just say, hey, I just want you to be aware that what you're doing right now is bringing me down. It's bringing other people down too. So, take a walk around the block, cool down, whatever you need to do. But just, don't bring this in here. Running out of food. So when we first opened, we just, had no idea how busy we were going to be from night to night. And there was plenty of nights at 6:30 that we'd run out of brisket, which is why people came here. So, having to explain to the customers that, hey, we don't have brisket, but, we've got sausage or whatever, makes for a really challenging shift. And the weather being good. So we've got a beautiful big outdoor patio, and on busy days, the inside seats get filled up really fast, and then people just run out of places to sit. So we've adjusted and we've come up with some other ideas, but we just don't have a ton of seating. So if I wake up and it's a rainy Saturday, I'm like, oh brother, this shift's gonna be way harder than it needs to be because I'm gonna be corralling people and telling people they can't sit down until they get their food and blah blah blah. So if those four things happen, it's a pretty good, easy job. But it's more for me about having to kind of look at the big picture of things and, kind of look at the long-term ness of this. So I'm one of the partners of Lewis Barbecue as well. So I'm kind of in it for the long haul. I've got, a stake in the business. And so, I treat it like my kind of home away from home.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I don't normally get into schedule fly stuff on here, but I have to ask, because you said when people don't show up, how do they, how is it? They have their schedule at their fingertips all the time. They've gotten alerted. I guess sometimes things just happen. But what do y'all do? I mean, do you use ScheduleFly to communicate with staff and
absolutely
broadcast out something to let people know somebody else, ask somebody to come in? Or
totally. So we're enough of a place where if I know about it ahead of time, or somebody says, "Hey, I meant to request this off, but I'm going out of town and I forgot to request it off." it's usually I put the schedule out, about a week before it actually happens. So we've got time to adjust. It's when you get somebody that calls 5 minutes beforehand, that's when you're kind of scrambling a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's more of, getting on the phone and calling people and begging them and, figuring something out like that. So we do use Schedule Fly. We use the message system to kind of broadcast messages to everybody, anything important. We use that for. And I was kind of talking to Will earlier about the first week that I did the schedule, and went from a place called Evo Pizza in North Charleston, and great place, Neapolitan pizza, craft beer. But we, had 2 servers, an SA, and a bartender on staff. So the schedule was pretty easy to do. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just do this on my Excel spreadsheet, just like any other time. And I think that I spent about 15 hours on that first schedule and had all this color code. And I mean, it's just nauseating to even think about. I was looking for a copy of it, and I think I burned them all. Burned that memory. And then the next day, I think after that schedule went out, I started scouring the internet for a schedule software company, and Schedule Fly seemed to have the best reviews, and the places that were that I really enjoyed going to in Charleston were using them. So really have been using them since week 2, and we've been open since June 2016. So
that's cool. We really appreciate it. No, I just always, that's one of the big things we try to do is eliminate the people, I didn't know I didn't know I was working.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to make that excuse when it's on your phone.
It's right there in your pocket. Okay, cool, man. Well, so what's next for y'all?
Well, we actually had there's a place called The Workshop, which is about a mile away, a little bit of an experimental place. It's a lot of businesses, and there's a food hall there. It's called The Workshop, and we had a stall called Juan Luis that was there for about a year and a half. So we closed that in September. It was always kind of meant to be a temporary thing, and we did it for about a year and a half, and kind of decided, partly with staffing and the staffing issues that we had, and it was just kind of time to move on. So that was our kind of little hobby restaurant, if you will. John likes to make fun, different names with his name. So Juan Luis is, John Lewis in Spanish. And his other alter ego is Johnny Luigi. And we've done a few Detroit style pizza nights here. So the first one we did, John did Detroit style pizzas. I actually like to cook at home a lot, and pizza's kind of something that I'm very interested in and doing. So I've got this little portable Neapolitan pizza oven. So I was doing Neapolitan pizzas. John was doing Detroit pizzas, and Philip, who's our chef de our kitchen manager, he was doing these bagel bites, and he made his own bagels for it and everything. So it's really fun. Cool. But it was kind of like those pop-ups. We did it on a Monday, and we're closed on Monday. And 300 people showed up for these pizzas. So we were a little. Took a while for people to get their pizzas. So the second time we did it, we took reservations, and it was a little. It was quite a bit calmer than the first night. So I think we'll probably be doing another pizza night down the line. As for another Lewis barbecue, we've looked at a few different spots in a few different towns, and nothing's really clicked like it did in Charleston in this spot. So we're not opposed to it, but nothing's in the works right now.
It's got to be the right fit.
It's got to be the right fit.
Yeah.
And going to another town is hard, and food and bev is hard.
Yep.
And where you don't know people. Which is part of the reason why I kind of got on board as early as I did, was because John, he had the barbecue down. The restaurant was going to be successful no matter what, but they really wanted somebody with some Charleston restaurant experience, connections here, connections to the community, which I think is why I got to be at kind of the top of the list, is a viable candidate for that.
Okay, all right. So we maybe some pizza in the future. All right,
maybe some pizza.
That's cool. What is Detroit style? I literally. There's a restaurant in Raleigh, and I saw on Instagram yesterday, they were talking about how they've been to Detroit and spent some time there, and they were going to do Detroit style. They have pizza, but they're going to do Detroit style pizza some night this week or something like that. What does that mean?
So if you remember going to Pizza Hut when you were a kid, and getting the personal pan pizza.
Yeah.
And that waitress puts that timer down. It's supposed to be in 5 minutes or less. And it's pretty much the same thing. It's square. It's like a pan pizza.
Okay.
So, you get this really kind of buttery, crusty goodness. It's, it's kind of thick like a, Sicilian style pizza. It's like a rectangle. They're individual pizzas. And, it's like there's a place there's a little food truck in Austin. I think it's called like Via 313 or whatever the zip code is in Detroit. And they do that in Austin. So John, went there, and every time I go to Austin with John, we always go there and get the Detroit style pizza. So they put the cheese and the toppings on, and then they put the sauce on top of that, and they cook it. So but it's pretty much like a personal pan pizza.
Yep.
A little fancier.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. Well, that sounds good. Sounds good, even though I just ate a full plate of barbecue. It kind of makes my mouth water a little bit. Well, let me ask you this. Are you, just a couple more things now, I mean, as a GM, you're wearing a lot of hats. How much of your energy do you spend on trying to grow revenue, and then how much on trying to reduce costs? I'm just curious on this.
So I think reducing costs is a really smart way to make more money, and kind of looking at things month to month. And I go over with Philip, who's our kitchen manager. We go every month, we get our numbers and go over what the meat costs were, what the meat sales were, and produce and dairy, and this and that, and look at our paper products and see where we're being wasteful and see where we can be a little bit more efficient. So always trying to be more efficient. Also trying to figure out how to maximize profit at this restaurant more than looking to open other places and this and that. So really kind of growing our catering department.
Okay.
And that's grown kind of exponentially in the last couple of years. We've got a couple of really good people that are kind of working behind that. And for me, I like to be the captain of the ship, and I like to hire people that are going to work their butts off and do their job without me having to micromanage them.
Yeah.
And I've got some really good people in the catering department now, and they do it all. And they, if they have a question, they ask me, but for the most part, they're pretty self-sufficient and really, really just growing that business.
Okay, cool.
We have been, when we opened, we were closed on Monday and Tuesday, and we had been closed on Mondays. We still are. But starting in January, we're going to be open on Mondays too. Another way that we're just like, hey, we've got all these fixed costs done. We've got people in the smokehouse already on Monday. We've got prep cooks already in on Monday. We've got people in the front of the house that want to work a little bit more. So let's just do it. And
so 7 days.
7 days, starting in January.
Gotcha.
So, just things like that, just kind of thinking about how to make this more efficient with what we have, rather than, hey, we need to build this, private event space, or we need this other restaurant or this and that. It takes a long time to pay off those loans and to, get that whole thing working. I'd rather kind of maximize profits at this spot. And then once we do that, then maybe kind of look into expanding with something else. Gotcha.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I told you about half an hour, and I know you got a lot going on, so we'll hold to that. We've been right at about 30 minutes, man. But Ben, thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
I appreciate your time. We appreciate the chance to serve y'all. Y'all have folks, if you're in Charleston, you'll hear about Lewis if you come here, and just come visit, because it's truly amazing. The service, the atmosphere, the food is ridiculously good. So they're doing a great job here. So Ben, thank you very, very much, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, man.